Good evening, sir. My name is Venzon, 22, and this is my final assessment exam. TOGAP. What is TOGAP? TOGAP is an enterprise's architecture framework that helps define business goals and align them with architecture objectives around enterprise software development. The Open Group Architecture Frameworks, TOGAF, is an enterprise architecture methodology that offers a high-level framework for enterprise software. Development TOGAF helps organize the development process through a systematic approach aimed at reducing errors, maintaining timelines, staying on budget, and aligning IT with business unit to produce quality results. The Open Group developed TOGAF in 1995, and by 2016, 80% of global 50 companies and 60% of Fortune 500 companies use the framework. TOGAF is free for organization to use internally but not for commercial purposes. Business can, however, have tools, software, or training programs certified by the Open Group. There are currently 8 certified TOGAF tools and 71 accredited courses offered from 70 organizations. In 2022, the Open Group announced the latest update to the framework and released the TOGAF Standard 10th edition that replaced the previous TOGAF Standard 9.2 edition. This update to TOGAF promises to make it even easier for business to adopt TOGAF and implement the best practices into the organization. The Open Group states that the 10th edition will help businesses operate more efficiently and will provide more guidance and simpler navigation for applying the TOGAF framework. TOGAF framework overview. Like other IT management frameworks, TOGAF helps businesses align IT goals with the overall business goals while helping the organize departmental IT efforts. TOGAF helps businesses define and organize requirements before a project starts, keeping the process moving quickly with few errors. What you get what you get with TOGAF. What you get with TOGAF courses. Recognition proof of if you want to earn a better salary, TOGAF courses are great choice against their considerable demand for certification in this field. It's an excellent way to prove your commitment to continuous learning. Furthermore, certification highlights your ability. It shows you have the knowledge to thrive in your role as an IT professional. Resultantly, you could receive higher pay. Also, your employer will view as a valued asset. Recognition. Firms around the world recognize TOGAF certification. A result, you can work in IT in many locations around the world. Globally, there are thousands of certified TOGAF professionals. TOGAF certification shows you have knowledge compared to the leading expert in your field. It can help you develop in managerial abilities. With TOGAF training, you'll understand the language of enterprise architecture. With TOGAF training, you can fulfill your employer's need efficiently. For instance, you'll learn how to create an IT budget. You'll also learn how to spend the budget more effectively. Top-notch training. The most significant Fortune 500 companies recognize the value of TOGAF certification. It can provide a substantial boost to your career. Many Fortune 500 companies rely on TOGAF for routine operations. Example, adapting to GAF to an agility methodology. It's unlikely for an organization to employ multiple enterprises architecture frameworks simultaneously through one possible scenario in when a merger is underway. As an example, two merged organizations could be using different frameworks, the TGAP standard and the Saxman frameworks. In the long term, this might be reduced to one framework, but the way we need to coexist while merging is underway. To clarify, the Saxman framework is not a methodology, it's an ontology. Describe the enterprise structure applicable to architecture. TOGAF is a methodology that has the ADM is a process to deliver enterprises architectures. In addition, the several of its other capabilities. However, adapting TOGAF is Saxman's will demonstrate the flexibility to TOGAF. Additionally, this will prove a way for organization to transition from Saxman to TOGAF, as TOGAF provides a more comprehensive solution than provided by Saxman. Takeaways: TOGAF replaces the need to organically grow your own enterprise's architecture practice. Become familiar with the standard replaces the need to reinvent a process, a processes, practices, structures, and principles. For an understanding of the TOGAF comprehensiveness across process, content, guidelines, rules, structures, learn the basic 7 parts of the standard. Leverage the techniques of TOGAF to apply it to your organization. If needed, leverage the adoption techniques to have it coexist with other frameworks. Track your success by assessing accomplishment in your delivered target architecture. Share the benefits of adopting a standardized EA frameworks such as the TOGAF standard with other. Encourage your organization to not reinvent the wheel if creating custom EA practice. Working with simple APIs. Our second topic is working with simple APIs. What is API? APIs 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 are mechanisms that enable the software components to communicate with each other using a set of definition and protocols. For example, the Weather Bureau is Bureau's software system contains daily weather data. The, the weather app on your phone talks to this system via APIs and show you daily weather updates on your phone. What does API stand for? API stands for Application Programming Interface. In the context of APIs, the word application refers to any software with a distinct function. Interface can be thought of as a contract of service between two applications. This contract defines how the two communicate with each other using requests and responses. The API documentation contains information on how developers are to structure those requests and response. How do APIs work? API, API architecture is usually explained in the term of client and server. The application sending the request is called the client, and the application sending the response is called the server. So, in the weather example, the Bureau weather database is the server, and the mobile app is the client. There are four different ways the APIs can work depending on when and why whether they created. So, APIs. These APIs use simple object access protocol, client and server exchange message using XML. This is a less flexible API that was more popular in the past, RPC APIs. These APIs are called remote procedure calls. The client completes a function or procedure on the server, and the server sends the output back to the client. WebSocket APIs. WebSocket API is another term web API development that use JSON objects to pass data. A WebSocket API supports two-way communication between client apps and the server. The server can send callback message to connect client, making it more efficient than REST API. REST APIs. These are the most popular and flexible APIs found on the web today. The client sends requests to the server as data. The server uses this client input to start internal function and returns output data back to the client. Let's look at the REST APIs in more details below. What are the different types of APIs? APIs are classified both according to their architecture and scope of use. We have already explored the main types of API architectures. So let's take a look at the scope of use. Private APIs. These are internal to an enterprise and only used for connecting system and data within the business. Public APIs. These are open to the public and may be used by anyone. There may not be some authorization and cost associated with this type of APIs. Partner APIs. These are only accessible by authorized external developers to aid business to business partnership. Composite APIs. These combine two or more different APIs to address complex system requirements or behavior. Example, pay with PayPal. Ever use PayPal to pay for something directly within an e-commerce store? Yep, that's also an API at work. Just like with logging in using a social media services, the pay with PayPal functionality is built with APIs to ensure that the end application can only do what it needs to without being exposed to sensitive data or gaining access to unintended permissions. In terms of the inner workings of this handling function, it's very similar to the login process described above. When the user clicks the PayPal button, the application sends an order request to the PayPal API, spe- specify the amount owed and other important details. Then a pop-up authenticates the user and confirm their purchase. Finally, if everything goes to plan, the API sends confirmation of payment back to the applications. Twitter bots. Another example of APIs at work is the huge range of bots on Twitter. Twitter bots are accounts that automatically tweet or retweet, follow, and send direct messages based on software instructions. There are loads of bots on Twitter, but here are just a few of our favorites. Tiny Care Bot. Send Harley reminders to drink water, strength, get fresh air, and more. Grammar Police identifies common grammar mistakes made by its followers. Netflix bots tweets when new content is released on Netflix. All of these bots are powered by the Twitter API. Aside from allowing you to execute simple action like tweeting a certain phrase or following a user, the Twitter API can also tell bots when something specific happened on the platform. For example, you can ask the Twitter API to tell your bot whenever it receives a new follower. Then you can program your bot to send message to that follower using the API. Deploy computer vision app in serverless environment. What is serverless? We started with building and deploying application on our hosted servers and data centers with responsibilities for configuring and managing these servers. With the advent of the cloud, other remote computing platforms can virtual machines where you could rent and use servers on demand. When containers became mainstream, so did container orchestration platforms for application infrastructure like Kubernetes. We are now moving towards the era of serverless. We are trade off the customization of our infrastructure for speed in development and deployment. How does serverless work? Serverless platforms allow you to build, run your application and services without thinking about servers. This is a new paradigm, and there are two aspects of it. Bring your code for execution. Integrated integrate or glue your application code with other managed bank services. For code execution, most serverless platforms will have a function as a service fast offering that will provide the function for you to execute your code. On the serverless platform, this way you can develop, run, and manage your application without worrying about the underlying infrastructure. You are working at the level of function, not at the level of container or server or a virtual machine. A sample architecture overview. The system uses a host of AWS serverless technology, no network or operating system to configure here. The deep lens is already integrated with the AWS Lambda through the Greengrass interface that runs the function code onto the device. The remainder of the architecture uses cloud native event event driven processing. The image of the people uploaded from the deep lens are moved around in S3, which triggers the appropriate actions using Lambda functions. This has the nice side effect of sorting the images from downstream debugging and analytics purposes. Build a COVID dashboard with React. Summary data component. With the dashboard menu wrapped up, let's move on to the summary cards section of the dashboards. There are 4 cards in total displaying cumulative cases, recoveries, deaths, and vaccination corresponding to the location selected. The data in this card should be updated by making a new call to the API every time a new location is selected. Since the cards are identical in terms of their markup and only differ by the data they are displaying, they are an ideal candidate for a component. Add summary cards to dashboard. Open up the JS and import the card component created in the last step by modifying the import like so. Declare a new state corresponding the summary card data by adding the following below existing state declaration. Finally, update the dashboard summary div like so. You should see the following output. Final output. Deploy serverless app for image processing. Project outline. In this project, we'll be using Code Engine to walk through a common pattern on how an application will morph over time from just a prototype to one that will then be used in production. To keep the example simple, we'll be creating an image transformation service that will process an image by examining it and creating thumbnail that will version of it. The code itself to do this transformation isn't really the point of this project. Rather, it's the growing up of the infrastructure around the application and how Code Engine can make that easier. Build a simple RESTful Java microservice using JAX, RS, and JSONP. Welcome to creating a RESTful web service guide. What you'll learn. You will learn how to build and test a simple RESTful service with Jakarta, RESTful web service, and JSONP, which will expose the JVM's system properties. The RESTful service responds to get requests from the HTTP loca- localhost 9080 Liberty Project system dash system dash properties URL dot. The service responds to a GET request with John, Johnson JSON representation of the system properties, which each property is a field in JSON object like this. The design of an HTTP API is an essential part of creating a web application. The REST API is the Go architectural style for building an HTTP API. The Jakarta RESTful Web Services API offers function to create, read, update, and delete exposed resources. The Jakarta RESTful Web Services API supports the creation of RESTful web services that are performant, scalable, and modifiable. Getting started. To open a new command line session, select terminal, new terminal from the menu of the IDE. Run the following command to navigate to the dash home dash project directory. The fastest way to work through this guide is to clone the Git repository and use the projects to unprovide inside. The start directory contains the starting project that you will build upon. The finished directory contains the finished project that you will build. Try what you'll build. The finished directory is in the root of this guide contains the finished application. Give it a try before you proceed. To try out the application, first go to the finished directory and run the following Maven goal to build the application and deploy it open liberty. After you use the following message, your application server is easy. Open another command line session by selecting terminal, new terminal for the menu of the IDE. Check out the services at the http double dash localhost 9080 dash liberty project dash system dash properties URL that you see the output from this URL in the IDE. Run the following command at a terminal. After you finish checking out the application, stop the Open Liberty server by pressing Control plus C in the command line session where you run the server. Alternatively, you can run the Liberty stop goal from the finished directory in another shell session. Testing the service. You can test this service manually by starting server and pasting the link. However, automated tests are a much better approach because they triggered a failure if a change introduced a bug. JUnit and the Jakarta RESTful Web Services client API provide a simple environment to test the application. Run the following touch command in your terminal. Getting the values to create a representation of the URL is simple. The test class uses the get property method to get the application details. When you are done checking out the services, exit dev move by presenting Control C in the command line session where you run the server or by typing Q then pressing the enter return key. Consuming a RESTful Java web service using JSON-B and JSON-P. The REST API has become to go-to architectural style for building an HTTP API. The JAX RS API offers functionality for creating, reading, updating, and deleting export resources. The JAX RS API supports the creation of RESTful web services that come with desirable properties such as performance, scalability, and modifiability. You'll learn how to access a REST service, serialize a Java object that contains a list of artists and their albums, and use two different approaches to you'll learn how to deserialize the return JSON resources. A sample. Take takeaways. Takeaways. Businesses are increasingly deploying their service on the web in the form web applications, self-service, message-based service, and more recently REST services. Although the movement toward REST is widely recognized, there is not much concrete information regarding the technical features being used in the field such as typical data formats, how HTTP verbs are being used, or typically URI structure, just to name a few. Classify recipe, recipe text to cuisine using NLP and logistic regression. Sample. How to do text classification. Text classification is nothing but the process in which the text is assigned to particular tag or category depending upon its content. This classification can be used in real-world problems from e.g. sentimental analysis, spam detection, analyzing the customer reviews, and many more. A sample, takeaways. While solving NLP problems, it's always good to start with the pre-built cognitive services. When the needs are beyond the bounds and the pre-built cognitive service and why you want to search for custom machine learning methods, you will find this repository very useful to get started. Navigate to the setup guide, which lists instruction on how to set up your environment and dependencies. Thank you.